They called it impossible. A 2-kilometer shot through dense fog, target barely visible, wind speed unpredictable. The Navy SEAL reconnaissance team had been observing the compound for 3 days, and every tactical analysis concluded the same thing. No clean shot available. That's when she appeared at the ridge line, a figure so still she seemed carved from stone itself. No scope adjustments, no range calculations visible to the naked eye. Just one woman, one rifle, and a silence that would haunt everyone present. What happened in the next 40 minutes didn't just challenge everything they knew about precision shooting. It rewrote the entire manual on what human capability could achieve. Welcome to those who left a trace. Before we dive into this incredible story of impossible precision and hidden mastery, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe that legends often walk among us unrecognized, hit that subscribe button and help us share these stories that need to be told. The mountain ridge overlooked a valley that had seen too much violence. 3 days of failed reconnaissance had left the SEAL team frustrated and running out of options. Intelligence indicated high-value targets would be moving through the compound below, but every angle they'd analyzed presented the same problem. Too far, too many obstacles, conditions too unpredictable for a guaranteed shot. The morning mist clung to mountainside like a living thing, reducing visibility to mere glimpses of movement far below. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun lowered his binoculars and shook his head. Command's asking for confirmation on target elimination, but I'm telling you right now, this shot doesn't exist. Not with current conditions, not from this distance. His voice carried the weight of 15 years in special operations. Countless missions where the difference between possible and impossible meant the difference between coming home and becoming a memory. Corporal Williams, barely 25 but already seasoned by 3 tours, crouched beside him studying the tactical map. What about repositioning? Moving closer? Chin pointed toward the compound perimeter. See those patrol patterns? They've got the entire approach covered. We get within 1,000 meters. We're compromised. And even then, the wind sheer in this valley. He gestured toward the swaying trees below. It's like trying to thread a needle in an earthquake. The rest of the team maintained their positions, each man lost in his own analysis of an impossible situation. They'd been inserted 72 hours ago with a simple mandate: locate, observe, and eliminate. Simple in theory, impossible in practice. The targets were too well protected, the environment too hostile, the variables too numerous. In the world of special operations, you learn to accept that some missions just couldn't be completed as planned. That's when she appeared. None of them heard her approach. One moment the ridge was empty except for her team. The next moment a figure materialized from the tree line, as if the mountain itself had decided to take human form. She moved with the fluid economy of someone who'd learned long ago that wasted motion could mean wasted life. No unnecessary gear, no tactical vest heavy with equipment. Just a woman in simple woodland camouflage, carrying what appeared to be a custom rifle that seemed almost too large for her frame. Chen's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, but something in her posture, her deliberate approach, made him pause. She wasn't moving like a threat. She was moving like someone who belonged there, someone who'd been invited to a party the rest of them hadn't known was happening. Contact, he whispered into his radio, but kept his weapon lowered. The woman stopped about 30 meters from their position, close enough to be clearly visible, but far enough to avoid seeming aggressive. She wore no rank insignia, no unit patches, nothing that would identify her branch of service or even her nationality. Her face was weathered but ageless, the kind of face that could belong to someone 30 or someone 50. What struck every man present was her eyes. Not hostile, not friendly, just measuring everything around her with the calm assessment of a predator that had never known what it meant to be prey. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying despite being barely above a conversational tone. The accent was American, but with undertones that suggested she'd learned to speak quietly in places where loud voices attracted the wrong kind of attention. I understand you have a tactical problem. Chun exchanged glances with his team. In all his years of operations, civilians didn't just appear on classified missions. And everything about this woman suggested she was anything but civilian. Ma'am, this is a restricted area. I'm going to need to see some identification. His training demanded protocol, but his instincts were already telling him this wasn't a situation covered in any manual. She reached slowly into her jacket and produced a single card. No wallet, no folder full of credentials, just one piece of plastic that she handed to Chun without ceremony. He glanced down and felt his breath catch. The card was matte black with only a few lines of text, but those lines carried more authority than any rank insignia ever could. Classification level above his clearance, authorization codes he'd heard whispered about but never seen, and a designation that made him understand why she'd appear like a ghost from the wilderness. Jesus, Williams whispered, reading over Chen's shoulder. That's above your pay grade, the woman finished gently. Above all your pay grades, actually. But right now, that compound has targets that need to be eliminated, and you gentlemen have discovered what everyone discovers eventually. Some shots require a different kind of shooter. Chen handed the card back, his mind racing. In special operations, you learn to recognize the difference between regular military special forces and something else entirely. This woman was something else entirely. Ma'am, with respect, we've run every calculation. Wind, speed, distance, target movement patterns. The variables make this shot statistically impossible. She accepted the card back and tucked it away. Statistics are useful for explaining what's already happened, less useful for determining what's going to happen. She gestured toward the compound below. Your targets are scheduled to meet in the central building at 1400 hours. Window of opportunity approximately 8 minutes before they disperse to separate vehicles. Current weather patterns suggest the fog will lift partially around 1350, providing a clear line of sight for roughly 12 minutes. Williams frowned. How do you know their schedule? We've been monitoring communications for 3 days and haven't intercepted anything that's specific. The woman's smile was subtle but unmistakable. Different people hear different things, Corporal. What matters is that you have 8 minutes to complete your mission, or those targets disappear into a network that will take months to locate again. She unslung her rifle and began what appeared to be routine preparation. Unless you prefer to call this one impossible and head home. Chun watched her work, recognizing the movements of someone who performed these same actions thousands of times. The rifle was unlike anything in standard military inventory. Custom-built, precision-engineered, the kind of weapon that cost more than most people's cars and was worth every penny to someone who knew how to use it. Ma'am, that's a 2-kilometer shot in uncertain conditions. Even our best marksmen wouldn't attempt it. Your best marksmen aren't here, she replied, settling into a prone position that seemed to mold her body to the contours of the ridge. I am. The next 30 minutes will be remembered by every man present for the rest of their lives, not because of what they saw, but because of what they didn't see. The woman. They never learned her name, never saw her again after that day. Position herself with the kind of patience that comes from understanding that rush shots are missed shots. She didn't use a spotter, didn't request wind readings, didn't ask for any of the support that normal long-range shooting required. Instead, she simply waited. Chin found himself holding his breath as he watched her through binoculars. The fog was beginning to shift, creating brief windows of visibility toward the compound. Through these gaps, he could make out figures moving between buildings, vehicles positioned for rapid departure, the kind of high-security setup that meant important people were about to have important meetings. At exactly 13:52, three black SUVs pulled into the compound courtyard. Men in tactical gear took positions around perimeter, while figures in civilian clothes moved quickly toward the central building. Chun could barely make out individual shapes at this distance, even with his optics. The idea that anyone could identify specific targets, let alone engage them accurately, seemed beyond the realm of possibility. The woman didn't move. Her breathing had slowed to the point where her back barely rose and fell. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. The mark of someone trained never to fire until the moment of decision arrived. Around her, the SEAL team maintained their positions but found themselves unconsciously holding their own breath, as if any sound might disturb whatever was about to happen. 13:56. Movement in the compound. Figures emerging from vehicles, crossing the courtyard, disappearing into the building. Chun whispered into his radio, providing updates to command that felt increasingly surreal. Unknown friendly has target area under observation, preparing to engage a distance previously assessed as impossible. The woman's voice was barely audible, more breath than sound. Targets acquired. Multiple hostiles. Civilians in proximity. Window closing in 90 seconds. Her words weren't directed at the SEAL team. She was talking to herself, maintaining the mental checklist that kept precision shooters alive in situations where one mistake meant mission failure. Jim realized he was witnessing something that happened perhaps a dozen times in any given year. Anywhere in the world, the convergence of perfect training, perfect conditions, and perfect necessity that allowed human capability to transcend normal limitations. This wasn't just shooting. This was artistry with lethal consequences. 13:58. The fog shifted, creating a corridor of clear air that stretched from the ridge to the compound. It would last perhaps 90 seconds before weather patterns closed it again. In that window, targets would be visible, vulnerable, and eliminating them would save lives that wouldn't be saved any other way. The woman's finger moved the trigger. What happened next occurred in absolute silence from a perspective of the SEAL team. No muzzle flash visible, no sound of the shot reaching them across the distance. Just a woman lying perfectly still behind a rifle that might as well have been part of the mountain itself. Chin kept his binoculars trained on the compound, expecting to see something. Chaos, movement, signs that shots had been fired. Instead, he saw figures falling. Not dramatically, not with the theatrical collapse of movie deaths, but with the simple cessation of movement that marked precise shots to center mass. First target down, then a second, then a third. Each elimination occurred with surgical precision, removing specific individuals while leaving everyone around them initially unaware that anything had happened. Targets eliminated. The woman said quietly. Secondary threats neutralized. Area secure. Williams lowered his own binoculars, his face pale. How many shots? As many as necessary. Chun did quick mental calculations. 3 primary targets, at least 2 security personnel, possibly more. That meant multiple hits at 2 kilometers in shifting wind conditions, with moving targets and civilian bystanders in proximity. The level of precision required went beyond training, beyond experience, into the realm of capabilities that most people didn't believe existed. The compound erupted into activity as remaining security personnel realized what had happened. Vehicles scattered. Figures ran for cover. Radios crackled with confused reports of sniper fire from unknown positions. But the primary mission was complete. The targets were eliminated. The meeting disrupted. The network that had taken months to locate was effectively decapitated. The woman began disassembling her rifle with the same methodical precision she'd used to employ it. No celebration, no acknowledgement of what she'd just accomplished, just the routine actions of someone completing a job that needed to be done. Gentlemen, I suggest you begin your extraction. Local response time to this position is approximately 15 minutes. Chen found his voice. Ma'am, what you just did was necessary, she finished. Nothing more, nothing less. She stood, shouldering her equipment with movements that suggested she'd already moved on mentally from what had just occurred. Your mission is complete. Your report should reflect that targets were eliminated by supporting assets. Details classified above your clearance level. Williams stepped forward. Wait! Who are you? What unit? Where did you train? The questions tumbled out, driven by the need to understand what they'd just witnessed. The woman paused, considering her answer. I'm someone who takes the shots that can't be taken by people who do jobs that can't be done in places that don't exist on any map. She began walking toward the tree line, already beginning to fade back in the landscape that had produced her. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible because someone decides it has to be. Chen called after her. Will we see you again? She turned back one final time, and for just a moment, her expression softened into something almost resembling a smile. You never saw me the first time, Sergeant. That's what makes this work. And then she was gone, not walked away, not departed, gone, as if the mountain had reclaimed what it had briefly lent to accomplish something that needed accomplishing. The SEAL team found themselves alone on a ridge, staring at a compound where impossible shots had eliminated targets that couldn't be eliminated, accomplished by a woman who existed in the spaces between classified and forgotten. Chen's radio crackled. Bravo team, report status. He keyed the microphone, already formulating the report that would become legend in certain circles, dismissed as impossible in others. Command, mission complete. Targets eliminated by supporting assets. Recommend immediate extraction. Copy that, Bravo. Outstanding work. Outstanding work. Chen almost laughed. They'd accomplished nothing except witnessing something that redefined their understanding of what human capability could achieve under impossible circumstances. For the rest of their careers, each man present would carry the memory of 40 minutes on a mountainside, where they learned that the word impossible was just another variable to be calculated and overcome. Years later, in quiet moments between missions, they would discuss what they'd seen, not the technical aspects. Those were classified beyond their clearance, but the feeling of witnessing perfection applied to purpose. The understanding that somewhere in the world, people existed who could accomplish things that defied explanation, who operated in the shadows between necessary and impossible. None of them ever learned her name. None of them ever saw her again. But each carried forward the knowledge that when missions couldn't be completed through conventional means, sometimes unconventional solutions appeared from the wilderness, accomplished what needed accomplishing, and disappeared back into classified legend. The compound below continued burning for 3 hours. Local authorities found no evidence of the sniper position, no brass casings, no signs that anyone had ever occupied the ridge. The official report listed the incident as internal violence between competing factions, targets eliminated by unknown assailants using unspecified methods. But in certain classified files, in briefing rooms where impossible missions were planned and executed, the story lived on, not as inspiration or entertainment, but as proof that human potential, properly trained and precisely applied, could transcend any limitation that statistics suggested should be absolute.